Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful, awakening, transformative planet of ours. This is Inspired Living Radio. I am your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, here for another live episode of Inspired Living Radio every second and fourth Wisdom Wednesday of the month here on the wonderful OMTimes radio. Today we're going to have a fantastic show. It's going to be a two-part show where we'll be doing the next show here in just a few weeks. We're going to kind of reverse order. So today we're going to be talking about equanimity with a practice and awareness of what equanimity is with a little bit of a meditation. And then I'm going to touch briefly on perception of the spirit world, or the perception of a world that is not seen with the physical eye through different sensations that we'll be talking about, and the work that I do as a psychic and as a spiritual medium, and how I came to this unseen world and when it started to open up to me. But today we're going to talk mostly about equanimity with everything that's going on. What is it? How can we practice it? How can we still be kind, caring, and compassionate, but still care about the world without taking the weight of the world on our shoulders? It's a balance. It's something that I would say probably in the last few years, last maybe 2 to 3 years, that I've become more aware of practicing equanimity, and something that I first wasn't introduced to in my spiritual journey over 20 years ago, and it took me now to this point to understand what it is and apply it to my life. So if you're new to Inspired Living Radio, welcome, welcome, welcome. Sit back, get comfortable, maybe change into some pajamas or some sweatpants, grab a coffee, a cup of tea, and we're going to just take the next 45 minutes to really just, what I like to say, spiritually prospect for the spiritual gold and the spiritual diamonds that are out there for all of us if we do a little bit of prospecting and work hard to find those. Again, we've been on the air for 6 seasons, so you can go back and you can check out all of the archive shows that we've done. We've covered everything, you guys, from medicine to meditation to metaphysics to mindfulness to psychic to mediumship to healing to transformations. The list goes on and on and on. I love doing this show. I love connecting with people, and today we're just going to add to the topic in another podcast of equanimity and perception of the spirit world. That is today's actual title of the show. If you do have a question, I will open up phone lines in the second half of the show if it's related to today's topic of equanimity, or maybe you have a question about mediumship. That number for OMTimes is 202-570-7057. Chris will put you into the waiting room until we can bring you on. You can also follow the show live on our Facebook page. We're monitoring that page right now. It's called Inspired Living Radio. It's the public Facebook page where you can join the global community. We have listeners from all around the world, so a big shout out to all of our inspired listeners that tune in or go and catch the podcasts on several networks now. The show is streaming on. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Just look for Inspired For Us. That is the number 4, Inspired For Us, to catch inspirations, weekly inspirations. We, our tagline here is be inspired, inspire others, inspire before we expire. And that's what we really try to do with this show, what I try to do and the work that I do. If you want to learn more about what I'm doing, you can check me out at marclainhart.com. Just internet search the Intuitive Prospector. I promise you I will show up somewhere if you are prospecting to get a reading or attend a workshop or maybe get a meditation or maybe just follow some of my fun shows that I do during the week. So with that, let's talk about a few things on equanimity. Maybe you've heard it. Maybe you're practicing it. And if you are, God bless you. Good for you. I'm glad that you found this. It's taken me a long time to find and understand equanimity, but to also apply it. Knowing and application are two different things. And I would say this last 2 years, especially with what we've gone through from this planet changing, from this pandemic that has impacted everybody, no matter where you're at on the planet, to the politics here in the United States and the transformation of what we're seeing with our democracy, to climate change. I mean, it's really hot here today. We're going to be up there pushing records again that we did last month, temperatures that we're not used to here in the Pacific Northwest, and things that we have to do to accommodate when we have that much heat impacting us. But that is part of the change, and that is part of the challenge. And equanimity is really just having, how can I say it? Like I said, I've tried to really bring it into awareness to balance. But the definition of it, let's just start there. The definition of equanimity is it's a state of psychological stability and composure. Let me say that again. Equanimity is a state of psychological stability and composure, which is undisturbed by experience of or exposure to emotions, pain, or other phenomenon that may cause others to lose the balance of their mind. Now, why am I talking about this today? Because I've seen out in society, I've seen it through social media, I've seen it in the news cycles. There's a lot of people not practicing equanimity. There's people that are, losing their way, in a sense, losing their mind. We have really big issues with mental health, really big issues with suicide and suicide attempts. I keep an eye on all of that because that's a direct correlation to what's happening in society. Some of the videos I see, with people, running down the street, just acting crazy, or on an airplane getting duct taped to a seat because they're assaulting the flight attendants. I mean, you can just go out there and see it almost every single day. And I thought this would be a good show to have to talk about equanimity and some things that we can do to help you with your journey. Talking about it, like I said, is one thing. Application is another. And I've talked about it for a few years when I became aware of it, but I didn't really start applying it until almost 1.5 years, 2 years ago, with cultivating some things to help me with some of the things that I was personally and professionally seeing, or people coming at me for things that I was presenting. I really always try to use my platforms, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or here on Inspired Living Radio through OMTimes. I really try to use my platforms for positivity, to cultivate kindness, compassion, caring, love. And not everybody's going to see that. That may actually be a trigger for some people. It may be an agitator for some people, or just, maybe some people are just suffering and they are lashing out. But what I try to do with everything that I do in my work, my radio shows, my Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, the Healing Cafe, Spiritual Takeout, anything, my writings, my articles, is really try to bring awareness to what's going on. And sometimes that topic is tough, and it's, a topic that may not resonate with people, but it's the awareness that creates the change. Eckhart Tolle reminds us the greatest change is through awareness. And that's what I try to do. And I know that it's not going to always impact that person at that time. It may impact them down the road later, and that's the point. You got to meet people with where they're at. But is equanimity a good thing? I personally, in my humble opinion, I think it is. I think cultivating the qualities of kindness, compassion, caring for another, and the joy that opens your heart to others, but it's also the balance of giving your heart's love with the recognition and acceptance that things are just the way they are. Because without this recognition, and I know this from personal experience, you guys, without this recognition, it's so easy to fall into what I call compassion fatigue, hope or burnout, despair. And when we fall into those categories, despair or loss or doubt, that leads other emotions from anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, suicide. I know personally firsthand from both family and friends who have committed suicide, the despair that they must have felt as they went down that path, and the pain they just wanted to stop. So if you're listening to this show today, or you catch any of my past shows, I hope that this show will plant a seed of awareness and a seed of transformation to find that diamond within, because really, guys, we're all broken. We are all broken some way, somehow, whether we're suffering our past or hoping to live in the future. But the power comes into what I call the magic of the moment. And that's right here, listening to this show, listening to the sound of my voice. And I hope that this gives some resonance and cultivates qualities of what we call the golden rule, paying it forward, treating others as we like to be treated. It's actually one of my spiritual principles as a spiritualist that we actually follow in the golden rule. And do I think that cultivating equanimity is a good thing? I sure do. And I hope that you'll apply it, you'll become aware of it, you'll talk about it, and hopefully you'll start using that to transform your life and the lives around you. So let's just talk about a few things. I'm going to read a poem. I think that this would be adequate for today's show. And then we'll get to our first break, and we'll come back and really kind of get into what I like to say the meat of the sandwich. This is kind of the bread layer, and then we get into the real meat of the topic after our first break, and then we go to our second break, and we come back and we kind of finish up with that last layer of bread. And this is from a poet that I have followed for many years, who I have long read about and come back to with, the days of, my own journey of, trauma and tragedy, or what I refer to today as the TNT, the trauma and the tragedy that literally blew my life up and put me on the path that I am today, having this conversation with you here through the airwaves. And it's by John O'Donohue. Some of you may know him. He's kind of famous as a poet. And it's called For a New Beginning. And when I was, putting this show together, I was like, how can I inspire people? And I always find that readings, poems, songs, movies, those are some of the most inspirational outlets that we can use as a society, as a culture. And it says this, For a New Beginning. In out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming. Waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight, when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn and find ease and risk. Soon, you will home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. And the world does await you. The world awaits all of us. And if we can approach this with equanimity, this helps the balance. This helps the journey. This is what I call soul adventures. And like I said, we're all broken. But if you take the concept of anything that's broken, for example, broken glass glued back together can actually be a great disco ball that brings light and joy and happiness and dance to a dance floor. Maybe it's the Japanese philosophy of something that's broken like a bowl, and instead of using glue, they use gold to use the glue of gold, so you see the gold within the bowl. And it's very obvious that the bowl has been broken and been repaired by gold, but the bowl itself becomes more valuable than before it was broken. And all of us are broken at some point. And that's why we do Inspired Living Radio. That's why I'm here on Wednesdays to inspire and to help and to find that diamond within. And just like that concept of the piece of coal that's somewhere in the darkness with all these extreme pressures, through free will and choice, we can turn that piece of coal and bring it out into the light like a prospector working hard, searching, digging, discovering, and pulling that diamond out, because a piece of coal over time under extreme pressures becomes that diamond. And I have no doubt, if you know your purpose and you have a passion and a plan, you'll find that diamond and what that is for you. And somebody, or this show, a mentor, a guru, a teacher, will help you unearth and prospect for that diamond to discover who you truly are. But after you discover who you truly are, you need to apply equanimity so you can have kindness, compassion, caringness, love for others without it taking over your life and then suffering compassion fatigue, helper burnout, or even despair, which leads into more deeper problems. There's a few quotes as we get ready for our first break, and the first one I want to talk about is from a former guest of the show, Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements several years ago and was on the New York best-selling list for over 10 years. It's a book that I had first read when I started to understand and become aware of what all of this was: meditation, metaphysics, mediumship, psychic, intuition, mindfulness, awareness. And it was a practical guide to personal freedom. And it's one of the very first books, along with The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari and The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And it's those three books that I still have in my library today. And because, Mr. Ruiz was a guest of Inspired Living Radio, there's a quote that says, "There's a huge amount of freedom that comes to you when you take nothing personally." And that's part of equanimity. And if you applied that quote from Mr. Ruiz and what he talks about in the Four Agreements, you take the poem For the New Beginning by John O'Donohue, you have a new beginning, you have a new soul adventure, and there's so much freedom and transformations and healing that comes for that if you know what equanimity is and you apply equanimity. So we're going to go to our first break. We'll be back here in 2 minutes talking about equanimity. This is Inspired Living Radio, where we like to say you are the inspired and the inspiration.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Listeners, we hope you're enjoying the shows here on OMTimes Radio. Marc Lainhart here, and host of Inspired Living Radio. And I'd like to invite you to my morning show of inspiration, encouragement, healing, motivations, transformations, and discovering that diamond within. Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, over on the Intuitive Prospector Facebook page and my YouTube channel, Soul Adventures. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
Do you feel like your emotions are all over the place? That's normal during this abnormal time. There are a number of ways to cope. Maintain a healthy routine, get enough sleep, eat nutritious food, and exercise at least 30 minutes each day. Schedule some time to talk with a friend or family member. And remember, you can always take a few deep breaths to feel more centered.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
And welcome back to Inspired Living Radio. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, where we like to say, be inspired, inspire others, inspire before we expire. And today we are talking about equanimity and what equanimity is, not only awareness of equanimity, but actually how can we start to apply it into our spiritual, maybe you have a non-spiritual, but we all have a physical journey. So it's the spiritual, non-spiritual, and physical journeys of our life. And equanimity is literally the state of psychological stability and composure, which is undisturbed by experience of an exposure to emotions, pain, or other phenomenon that may cause others to lose the balance of their mind. So one of the first prayers that really stuck with me as far back as I can remember, and I've been around the planet for a little bit now, is the Serenity Prayer. And I know that there are different forms of the Serenity Prayer based on different religions from around the world, maybe, not exactly written the same, but the same concept. And it goes like this: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Now, whatever God is for you, because God has several applications, you may be a full believer, you may be an agnostic, you want proof of God, which that's part of me, that's where I first came from, or you may be an atheist, you don't have a belief in life after death. If there's one thing that I can offer you based on my own personal soul adventure and the things that I've experienced, including my own near-death experience, including my own out-of-body experience, there is something on the other side of this. And God can be whatever your belief system is. Here on the Inspired Living Radio, we leave that open to your interpretation and your experience and your perception, because that's important. But I can tell you that whatever is on the other side of death, there is something palpable, and life does go on. So equanimity is finding that balance. And like I said, there are several questions about what to do with the suffering of our world. Right now, there's a lot of suffering going on. The planet is literally dying and transforming. We have this global pandemic that's now, starting to rage and ramp up again. We have a lot of political instabilities based on democracy fighting against autocracy here in the United States. A lot of different social media opinions and beliefs, and a lot of conspiracy theory and false facts that drive a house divided doesn't stand, as history has shown us several times. So what do we do with all this? There are several questions about what do we do with the suffering of the world. We're not even talking about, we could bring hunger into it. We could talk about systemic racism. We could talk about equality. We could talk about child trafficking. There are so many things of suffering and wrong and vileness and evil that's in our world. Maybe it's you have a family member or a friend who's suffering with an addiction or has a terminal illness. I've gone through both of those. I've experienced both of those, not personally, not firsthand, but my brother battled brain cancer for 2 years before he transferred over. My father-in-law, was terminal with multiple sclerosis. I've had a family member, deal with addiction, drug addiction, and to where it eventually took her life, or she took her life. And that's so how do you have compassion for that? How do you have a balance and a peaceful heart where you don't take that on? And again, like I said before the break, where you start to suffer the fatigue of caring and compassion fatigue or helper burnout and despair. That comes with first awareness of what is equanimity, and then the practice, and a practice that supports this. And like I said, it's something I only became aware of just a few years ago. I had heard about it, but I had really not paid attention to it. And with everything on the spiritual journey, that you never stand in the same river twice on a moving river, and there's always many things to learn, from your intuition to mindfulness to meditations to metaphysics to psychic to mediumship. The list goes on and on and on. So equanimity for me was kind of down on that list until a couple years ago. I had to really start applying it because of what I was seeing out in our society and through social media. And, it's letting go of control, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to care about somebody. And that's what equanimity becomes. It's about holding space for another. You can always hold space or prayer. You can always let go of that situation, and sometimes that might be a friendship. Sometimes that might be a relationship, a family. Maybe it's a love. You have to let go of someone that you love dearly because of their path and their journey, and it may be impacting you. But letting go of control doesn't mean that you don't care or you don't have compassion or love for the other. It's just realizing that person you don't really have control over. You only have control over yourself. And, I always say that wisdom recognizes that we can always love and hold space for another, because that's who we are as humans, period. But it's their journey, and it's not your wishes for them. And we sometimes have people like that in our lives. I'm sure you can think of a few people that they have many wishes for your journey. Parents come to mind, right? Many wishes for what they want you to be or what they see you envisioned you being, but you didn't become that. But the wisdom of a parent is also knowing that they can recognize and love you and hold space for you no matter what. And that it's your journey, and through free will and choice and experiences, both the happiness and the joy, the growing pains, the learning lessons are here for us to learn and to grow and to make choices. You know, the old saying, what we resist persists and the lesson repeats until it completes, has been a big part of my journey. You may learn to see the rising of all things with equanimity and balance, but with everything that rise also falls. That's part of the universal law. Some would call that karma. Some would call that spiritual balance. Some would call that infinity, the journey in, the journey out. Again, different applications, different religions, different concepts. But your happiness and your thoughts, or your happiness and your suffering, depend on your thoughts and actions, and not the wishes of you for another or another's wish for you. So how do you do that? Well, one technique, we're going to get into some concepts now. The meat of the show, like I said, it's like a spiritual sandwich, and we're going to start laying in some really good stuff, some ham and some turkey and some roast beef, maybe some tomato and lettuce, and really pile on this sandwich so we can take a nice big bite of it and really absorb what it is that I'm saying. And if you can release and become, if you can release by, letting go, that's a free will and choice. Nobody's going to make you do that. It has to become a conscious, mindful thing, and you have to take actions to do that, which again can cause different ripple effects. And not everybody wants to have ripples. Some like just status quo and don't like to, turn over the apple cart, if you will. But release and become equanimity. And the technique that I first started to use was called the FAR technique, FAARR. It's a technique that I came up with myself. It's my technique, and it just help me to remember, if I use the FAR technique, the farther I can go with my journey, the farther I can go with my wisdom, the farther I can go with my healing, my transformations, and the farther I can go with my relationships. And sometimes those relationships have to end so you can go farther in who you are. So the F in the FAR technique is to feel it. A lot of times we think too much. Charlie Chaplin is a great reminder of this. We think too much and we feel too little. And that's very true. So the first is to feel it. The second is to acknowledge it. By acknowledging something, that brings about awareness. So you can probably guess what the second A is, awareness. So feel it, acknowledge it. When you acknowledge it, that brings it out into reality. Your thoughts become your words become your actions. Now we've created awareness, and we know that through awareness, great things change, and awareness brings transformation. A current real-time example is the past shows that you may have heard. I've done a couple shows on UFOs, aliens, unidentified aerial phenomenon. It's not so much the focus on little green men and spaceships. It's the focus that our government, after a 75-year conversation, has publicly and officially put into a report. Yeah, it's only 9 pages, but it's the first report that brings awareness that, yes, there is something that they are aware of. They're not sure what it is, this unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, also known as a UFO, for many, many years throughout the centuries. We've only been having the conversation in public for the last 75 years, but we know UAPs and UFOs have been around for centuries. They appear in paintings. They appear all over in our history. But we're having an official report now where the government says, yes, there is something. We're not sure what it is. We need more money. We have a task force, and we're going to actually focus on this moving ahead. In that show, I talked about first contact already taken place, and it's not going to just be this big revealing message. It's going to be a process, and that starts with awareness. So coming back to our FAR technique, feel it, acknowledge it, have awareness to it, and then the R in the FAR technique is to respond to it. But remember, you guys, by not responding, sometimes that's your greatest power, that's your greatest peace, is by not responding, because not responding is a response within itself. Remember that. And then, of course, the last R in the technique is the release it. Release, let go. And that's where equanimity is going to come into play. Feel it, acknowledge it, awareness to it, respond to it, release it. Use the FAR technique the farther you go on your journey and the things that you're after in this life. You can even gesture. I found this when doing the FAR technique. You can gesture with your hands, and it can be very helpful while you're doing this. Maybe you have a mantra or meditation or the practice of equanimity, and just, say, let it go. Or for me, I always like to say, believe it, see it, achieve it, and, the Serenity Prayer. And open up your hands up to the sky. Open up your hands to nature. Open your hands up to God. Take a deep breath. Maybe do a dance. This can be really beneficial for applying the concepts of equanimity, because it's about bringing balance and knowing that you're not in control of everything. As Carl Jung reminds us, even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. And the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. It is far better take things as they come along with patience and equanimity. So if you follow Carl Jung like I have for years, the famous psychologist, he talked about equanimity and patience. And sometimes we need patience. Sometimes we need breath. Sometimes we get a little frog in our throat like I have right now, and we need some water. So, I love talking about this. I'm very passionate about this. And the other things that I would say that can really help you to cultivate equanimity as we apply these different layers to our sandwich today. Meditation for equanimity. I find that sitting in silence and stillness has been beneficial, and it's hard. It's not easy. I'll be clear about that. But the more, Rumi, the 12th century mystic and poet, reminds us, the more still and silent we become, the more we're going to actually hear. And for years, it was just such a oxymoron concept that I just didn't understand. I'm like, what do you mean if we just sit? How do I quiet my mind? How do I not have my mind run off in a different million places? And it was hard at first, but over time and through cultivating and discipline and practice, I found that meditation, I just reached a benchmark on my Insight Timer profile. Actually, I'm at now over 1,500 days when I started this journey of meditating every single day, and I'm over 40,000 minutes. I don't know what that actually equates to. I'd have to break that down. But on your profile, they actually measure how many days that you have meditated and how many minutes you've contributed. I'm over 40,000 minutes now. So I know that I can look back in that as a tracker, if you will, in my own progress. But I also look back 4 years ago to where my journey, my life, my relationships, my career, this radio show really started to change through the power of meditation. And you can meditate on equanimity. To Buddhism, if you follow different religions like I do, I look at all different religions because I really believe it's just one record with many songs on that record, depending on where you live. But the truth is love. All religions practice love. But in Buddhism, there is no path than that of self-care and self-awareness. Through an ancient technique called Vipassana, I think I'm saying that right, Vipassana, Buddha taught the world how to tame, even back then, what he called the monkey mind, a bunch of monkeys running around in our mind, and to live in a life of equanimity. And you can practice Vipassana. I don't practice it. Obviously, I can't hardly say the word. Vipassana anywhere in the world because of there's an institute or foundation called dharma.org that offers courses free of charge in exchange for a donation, kind of like Insight Timer. We have outlets and platforms at dharma.org, OMTimes Radio, OMTimes Magazine, Insight Timer. There's a lot of foundations and there's a lot of beneficial platforms that offer messages like Inspired Living Radio, or offer meditations, or offer different practices, and you can do a donation. You can do a donation for the show if you like. That's great. I love to have donations, but at the same time, it's meditating for equanimity is how you start to cultivate equanimity. I found that eating habits, hydration, and good sleep was a big part of changing the work that I do. Speaking of hydrating, I find that, eating habits, for me, I love sugar. And I know that roller coaster of emotions, which is eating processed sugar, and a lot of our foods today are processed with high qualities of sugar, or high quantities, I shouldn't say qualities, quantities of sugar. But foods with high amounts of processed sugar establishes a sense of euphoria. That's why it's so addictive. That's why fast food does so well, because of the sugar and the euphoria. I'll be honest. I love my McDonald's cheeseburgers when I put fries on it with only ketchup, or a Big Mac. But afterwards, I can't do it. I just feel crappy. I feel sick. But what it does, it's that excess energy that lets your mood plummet afterwards. And then I feel bad about what I ate, and then my thoughts follow suit. So eating habits can really play a part in your process. Avoid eating highly processed foods. Like, I don't do fast food anymore, and if I do, it's only on occasion. But I know that there's a price to pay, because what that does is it develops cravings, it creates addictions, and it will bring your efforts for cultivating equanimity to this uneven fight, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You kind of get behind the 8 ball when you don't eat right and you're trying to practice and cultivate equanimity. So I call it mindful eating. Mindful eating is, just being aware of, what is it? It's just paying attention to your body and how you feel. You get better digestion, weight loss. You start enjoying meals, maybe start cooking more. We have a garden, so we grow our own vegetables and then use those for our dinner and our lunches. Listen to yourself chew. These are all practices of mindful eating. I literally sometimes try to listen to myself chew because I'm being thankful and mindful of the nutrients and the energy coming into my body. Try different restaurants. Chew your food. When you're listening to yourself chew your food, maybe count 30 times. That helps you slow down and feel the sensation of fullness. Once you get to that, fullness, stop. Don't go past it, because that's something I used to do too, and I put on a lot of weight in my journey early on. Try not to eat around the clock. Re-eat later. I used to do breakfast, and I've through my studies realized breakfast is not necessarily when you should be eating. That in mindful eating, we talk about the self-care of eating nutrient-dense foods, reducing sweets. I'm a sweet tooth. I met my name growing up with Sweet Cheeks growing up because I just loved sweets. If the ice cream truck was going by, or if there was candy at the store, I had to have candy. So that's something I've had to really, tailor back and find, sweets, but good sugars and good sweets, and that's not always easy. But cooking your own food definitely helps, and noticing what you eat and avoiding your grabbing handfuls of just portions is very, very important as well for mindful eating. But that is how you can also start to cultivate equanimity. Good sleep. If you're not getting good sleep, it's going to really impact your personality, your emotions, your thoughts. So good sleep, at least minimal 7 hours a night, at least. We spend half our life in bed sleeping, so you might as well, make an investment in that, like we did. We purchased a sleep number, so I can actually I can measure through technology how I sleep. The bed adjusts to my sleeping patterns, my breath. It's very interactive, and I can actually see how I sleep. So, I reinvested in how we sleep, because sleeping, eating habits, good hydration, and diet are all big part of how you cultivate equanimity, because it's all tied together. So practice that, mindfulness into your eating, and try to make it a habit. You're going to need about 30 days, because we are creatures of habit, and we know that it takes about 30 days to really address the habit, work through the habit. You might be some days where you're, what I say, are hangry, which is a combination of angry and hungry, hangry, but after 30 days, it does get better and the habit changes. So what's another way that we can cultivate equanimity? Saying no to multitasking. Cultivating a disciplined mind is all about focusing. And when we come back, we're going to do just a little bit of that focusing meditation to help you. And then we're going to talk about the perception of mediumship. And then the next show I do will be more detailed about perception of mediumship, with a little bit of discussion on equanimity. But today's show is all about equanimity, the practicing, the awareness of it, and the cultivating of it. So when you are multitasking, and I know this to be true with my own journey, we are not focusing on one thing, but we're rather doing the opposite. We are all over the place, and that's where the monkey minds. Let's see here. Okay. Let's do a break. And I guess I'm 2 minutes over. So we're going to go to our break, and we'll come back and we'll pick this back up. The time is just going by so quick. So let's take our second break, and we'll be back here in 2 minutes here on Inspired Living Radio. We'll be right back.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Have you wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
If I could be you.
And you could be me?
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Inspired Living Radio. I'm your host, Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector. Having a good time here on Inspired Living Radio. The time is just flying. Time is the great illusion, as we like to say. And my producer, Chris, and I were just joking around. He's like, maybe I need to find my own equanimity because I love talking about this. And just the time was just going. So let's just jump right back into it. So I was talking about multitasking. When you want to cultivate equanimity, it's really important to just say, sometimes you just have to say no. And sometimes multitasking can actually do the opposite of what you're trying to do because you have so many things going on in your mind. You're trying to multitask. The monkeys start getting ramped up and start running around. And sometimes you just need to stop, take a breath, focus. I always think of Kung Fu Panda when Master Seafood tells Po, focus. He's thinking about foods and how he's going to cook the food and how he's going to eat the food. And he's like, focus. So you got to bring that monkey mind back. So I find that multitasking is really, for me, in the work that I do and how crazy busy I am throughout the day, multitasking can actually be not a benefit to how I cultivate equanimity. And that's what we're talking about today. Equanimity, the application, the awareness, and the practice of equanimity. So a great book that I read a couple years ago by J.B. Glossinger called The Sacred Six. Really great book. Would love to have him on Inspired Living Radio at some point, where he talks about the Sacred Six. When we start to do more than 6 things, then our productivity falls off. So crossing the T's, dotting the I's, more than 6 projects, more than 6 conversations, more than 6 emails, it really becomes, really hard to find equanimity because your thoughts are all over the place. So one of the things that you can do is we're going to just do a quick focus meditation here as we talk about cultivating equanimity, and saying no to multitasking, and sometimes just saying no is going to be a benefit for you, and focusing on one thing at a time so you avoid falling into the monkey mind scenario, which all of us can do. especially in today's society with all the different applications on the smartphone, the news cycle, the podcasts, the relationships, the mortgage, the children, the job. The list goes on and on and on. So what is a meditation for focus? Let's just do it real quick. Just sit back real quick, put your feet on the ground, rest your elbows on the table or the chair or on your lap, wherever you may be, and just take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. That's the proper way of breathing. There's actually a healthy way to breathe. Breathing in through the nose, breathing in the warm air as it passes through the nasal passageway. It warms the air up as it goes down into the lungs. You've got nose hairs, which are filters. And as you hold on to that air, put a smile on your face and then just release out through your mouth. And as you release, say, I let go of the things I can't control. I let go to the things that aren't self-helpful or self-serving or good to your higher self. So you can actually create your mantra through the power of breath. And focused mindful meditations is just really, in a nutshell, placing your attention on your breathing while filtering out the distractions and noticing whatever our mind begins to wander to. If you train your mind and keep attention in some of the most mundane things that we do, such as breathing for long periods of time, it's going to serve, I promise you, it's going to serve as a transferable skill for your work life, your school life, your professional life, and your private life. So, as we focus on our breath, take another nice. Feel the warmth of the air coming in. And as you hold on to that air, maybe even tense up a little bit. Just see where you're tense and just see where your mind tries to run off to. See if those monkeys are just trying to get out of your head and get on to that next thought. I can't listen to this guy. I can't listen to this podcast. I got to get this done. I got to go to the store. I got to pay this bill. Say stop. Come back to your breath. Deep breath in. Feet are on the ground. Body's more relaxed. Bring that breath in and go a little bit deeper now in your breath. And every time you breathe in what you want in life. Breathe in equanimity. Breathe in balance. Breathe in peace. And as you hold on to that, put that smile on your face. And with a nice big sigh, just let it go. Releasing the things you can't control. Releasing the things that don't offer you peace and love and healing and wisdom. Another nice deep breath in. Thinking about the FAR technique that we talked about earlier. Thinking about the Serenity Prayer. Thinking all the ways that we can cultivate and maintain equanimity for our journey, because it's a wild journey out there. And as you breathe in, you're just focusing on the breath. And when you're ready, just release. One more nice deep breath. Go as deep as you can now. Just sit with that vibration and sound for a quick second. Put your hand on your heart. Breathe in and ask for equanimity. Cultivating kindness, compassion, caring, but recognizing the balance of giving your heart's love with the recognition and acceptance that things are the way they are. Or as we like to say, and so it is. Again, without this recognition, it's easy to fall into what I call the compassion fatigue, the helper burnout, and a road that leads us down a path of despair. And that's not where we want to be. We want a life that's happy and healthy, a life that helps others, that serves others, that shows kindness and compassion, especially in a world that may not show us that back. And that's okay, because there's a huge amount of freedom that comes to you when you take nothing personally, as Don Miguel Ruiz reminds us in the 4 Agreements. Just say that prayer with me. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Focus on your breath. And that, my friends, is a quick 3-minute meditation on focusing, a meditation to focus and practice equanimity. So just to recap, meditation for equanimity, your eating habits, your hydration, good sleep for equanimity, saying no to multitasking to help with equanimity, surrender to your feelings. To Buddhism, in the study of Buddhism, there is nothing more real than the sensations in the body. And those who practice the teachings of Buddha know that to take power away from the monkey mind, we must focus on what is happening in the body. So just with that 3-minute focus meditation, just see how your body feels. See if there's a tingle somewhere. See if you feel lighter. See if you just feel more calmer, at peace. The mind can make things happen and forget them, but the body never lies or forgets. At the cellular level, we're all energy. We're spiritual, energetic beings here having a human experience. And the mind is really good at, amnesia or short-term memory, but the body holds on to that and it catches up over time. So as you move into cultivating equanimity, also creativity, art, music, sports, mindfulness, the power of now, not suffering your past and not predicting or wanting to live in your future that's not guaranteed. Those are also pillars of the study of Buddhism. Again, that's one religion out there, and there's many religions you can study, but they all are interesting because they all talk about the same thing, about being present in the moment, or what I call the magic in the moment. Our expectations make us miserable because we are demanding from the future, and I find that a lot of times with our own expectations usually comes self-disappointment. So I avoid those expectations by suffering my past or predicting my future, because trying to change the past is futile. Trust me, I've tried. It doesn't work, and hence all we have left is the present. So future is not guaranteed. So remember that equanimity is key and always prevails. Make this your mantra. Breathe, recite equanimity as a mantra, and walk away. Visualize your vagus nerve. We didn't really get a chance to talk about the vagus nerve, but it is tied to breath. It's tied to the nervous system, and just let go. Physical activity and meditation are always pathways to equanimity, and make equanimity your golden rule. So with the time we have left here, as we get ready to wrap up, geez, my vagus nerve must be kicking in because I have to drink some water here. We're going to just touch real quick on mediumship, because now that we've talked about equanimity for the last 40 plus minutes, we've done a quick focus meditation. Now we're focused on our breath. On the next episode of Inspired Living Radio, I'm going to go into depth about connecting and visualizing and seeing and experience what I call the etheric, the mediumship, the unseen world. I always say that we have 3 eyes in life: 2 to look with our physical eye and 1 to see with our third eye, or some would call it the brow chakra. So when I started to learn about mediumship, it was all based on perception, because everybody's perception is different. And we find that perception is where the medium, somebody that works between the physical world and the unseen spiritual world, becomes aware of a communicating spirit with their own mind and relays the information received to those that may seek us out for a reading. And when we receive messages from, the unseen world, mediumship is for those people that have once lived a life and passed through the portal of death. This isn't to include angels. This isn't to include your ascended masters or your spirit guides, because those are subjective. Mediumship is proof of life after death, or what I call ADCs, after death communications. And when you have a calm mind and you are practicing equanimity, and you're calm and you're balanced, that can really impact your mediumship. And mediumship starts with perception, because every medium and every person that works with the spirit world is different. And on our next episode, I will get into more detail about what perception is. But under the heading of perception would come, various faculties that we use with our senses, that we become aware of communicating with those that are not seen with the physical eye. It's using what we would call extrasensory faculties, which we all possess. And, whether you've had a reading with me or we have a future reading together, you'll hear me say this all the time. You don't need to go to a medium to experience your loved ones in thought, in perception, in equanimity, and just feeling them. They're only ever a thought away. And if you ask, believe, receive, perceive, they'll show you that they are very much around you and very much alive. And just look for the signs, the symbols, the synergy, and the synchronistic events. So we're going to talk about that on the next episode, the perception of mediumship, the perception of what is unseen, and we will also have just a recap on what equanimity is, because it's all in the same. It's a tool for the spiritual toolbox, and it's all part of the spiritual journey, the non-spiritual journey, and of course the physical world. So thanks for listening in today. I hope you got something out of this. I hope that you find your journey, and I hope that you find your balance and your peace through equanimity. And I'll just finish off the show with this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So until our next soul adventure together, be kind, be caring, be compassionate, practice and cultivate equanimity for all that you do, because it's going to make a very happy, healthy, transformative lifestyle as we move forward in this very difficult world of ours. So dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Have a blessed, healthy week. We'll see you next time here on Inspired Living Radio through the great OMTimes Radio Network. Take care, everybody. Namaste.